The distant world of Varka VII hung like an emerald pendant against the black velvet of space. From orbit, its vast swamps and dense forests gave the impression of a primordial world untouched by civilization. But nestled in a small clearing near the northern hemisphere's equatorial band sat Outpost Aegis, a testament to the Xeno Alliance's determination to establish a foothold on even the most hostile of worlds. Lieutenant Lana Reeves stood at the edge of the landing pad, watching as the transport that had delivered her lifted off in a cloud of steam and displaced vegetation. The ship grew smaller against the amber sky until it was nothing more than a pinprick of light. And then it was gone. She was officially stranded on this godforsaken rock for the next standard year. "Quite the view, isn't it, Lieutenant?" The voice behind her belonged to a Psylocke, one of the insectoid species that made up the bulk of the Alliance forces on Varka VII. His carapace gleamed a deep blue in the fading light, and his multifaceted eyes reflected the sunset in kaleidoscopic patterns. "It's certainly vibrant," Lana replied, trying to keep her voice steady. The gravity here was slightly heavier than Earth standard, and the air had a sweet, cloying scent that reminded her of overripe fruit. "I'm Lieutenant Lana Reeves, human contingent." "The first of your kind to be assigned to Aegis," the Psylocke said. Mandibles clicking in what she'd been taught was their equivalent of a smile. "I am Maru, patrol lead for Sector 4. You'll be joining my team tomorrow night." Lana nodded, feeling a twist of anxiety in her gut. Cycle 3478 marked only the second week since humanity had officially joined the Xeno Alliance, and she was the first human to be assigned to a mixed-species outpost. The diplomatic corps had warned her to expect curiosity, skepticism, and possibly even hostility from some of the more traditional Alliance species. "I look forward to it," she said, offering a salute that she hoped translated across species. "Any advice for a newcomer?" Maru's antennae twitched, a gesture that her cultural briefings had indicated could mean amusement or concern. "Stay away from the eastern marshlands after dark. That's Maja territory." "Maja!" The translator implant in her ear struggled with the word, suggesting it was a local name rather than a standard Alliance designation. "The apex predator of this charming little mudball," Maru explained, gesturing toward the dark line of trees that marked the beginning of the forest. 12 feet of muscle, teeth, and territorial rage. They hunt primarily by sound, using infrasonic pulses to locate prey. Silent killers, until they're right on top of you. The Psylocke made a harsh clicking sound. "Then they roar loud enough to rupture your eardrums before they tear you apart." Lana swallowed hard. Her briefing had mentioned dangerous indigenous life forms, but the clinical descriptions in the report hadn't quite conveyed the visceral threat. "How do you defend against them?" "We don't," Maru said simply. "That's their territory. We avoid it. The Alliance mandate is clear: minimal disruption to native ecosystems. We observe, we study, we defend the outpost, but we do not engage the local wildlife unless absolutely necessary." He gestured toward the main compound, a series of prefabricated structures arranged in a rough circle around a central command building. "Come. Captain Korvac will want to meet you, and you should settle in before night falls completely. The nocturnal predators here are enthusiastic." As Lana followed the Psylocke toward the compound, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She glanced back at the tree line, but saw nothing beyond the shifting shadows as Varka VII's twin moons began their ascent. "Welcome to the edge of known space," she thought grimly. 200 light-years from Earth, surrounded by aliens, with man-eating monsters lurking in the woods. Just another day in the Alliance. The following evening found Lana gearing up for her first patrol. The standard issue exoframe felt clunky and oversized on her human frame. It had clearly been designed with the more robust physiology of the Alliance's founding species in mind. Still, she'd managed to adjust it well enough that she could move without too much awkwardness. "You won't need the heavy armor," said a melodious voice from the doorway of the equipment room. Lana turned to see a Trias leaning against the frame, their slender, avian body silhouetted against the corridor lights. The feathered crest atop their head rippled in what Lana recognized as mild amusement. "I'm Keth," the Trias continued, stepping into the room with the fluid grace characteristic of their species. "Second on Maru's patrol. And trust me, if we encounter something the armor would help against, we're already dead." Lana frowned but began removing the bulkier pieces of the exoframe. "That's not exactly reassuring," Keth trilled, a sound Lana's translator didn't bother to interpret. "Not meant to be. Just practical. Varka 7 doesn't care about our comfort or survival. Better to be mobile than encumbered." "Noted," Lana said, strapping on a lighter chestplate and checking the charge on her sidearm, a standard Alliance pulse rifle that supposedly worked against most organic threats. "Anything else I should know before we head out?" "Yes," Keth said, head tilting in a bird-like manner. "The others are placing bets on how long you'll last. The average for new recruits is 3 patrols before they request a transfer. The record is 7. Lana felt a surge of defiance. Humanity had fought hard for their place in the Alliance, enduring decades of negotiations, technological exchanges, and cultural integration. She wouldn't be the one to reinforce the stereotype of humans as soft, fragile creatures unsuited for the harsh realities of frontier service. "Tell them to put me down for 10, she said with more confidence than she felt. "Minimum." Keth's eyes, golden and piercing, studied her for a moment before the Trias nodded. "I'll place your wager. Double Ration says you don't make it past 4. "You're on," Lana replied, slinging her rifle over her shoulder. "Now, where's the rest of this patrol I'm supposed to be part of?" The patrol route took them along the perimeter of the outpost, and then in a wide arc through the sparse woodlands to the west. Maru led the way, with Keth ranging ahead as scout. 2 other Psylocke officers, whose names Lana immediately forgot in her nervousness, brought up the rear. Lana walked just behind Maru, trying to match the insectoid's pace while scanning the surrounding vegetation for any sign of movement. "The boundary markers are embedded with sonic deterrents," Maru explained, as they passed a glowing blue post. "They emit frequencies that most of the local predators find unpleasant. Not foolproof, but better than nothing." "And beyond the markers?" Lana asked, noting how the forest grew denser and darker just a few hundred yards past the perimeter. "That's the true Varka 7th, Maru said, mandibles flexing. "Unmapped, untamed, and very much not interested in our continued existence." As if to emphasize his point, a high-pitched shriek echoed from the depths of the forest, followed by a wet, gurgling sound that cut off abruptly. Lana's hand instinctively went to her rifle. "Something just died out there," she whispered. "Something is always dying out there," one of the rear Psylocke guards commented. "The food chain on this planet is particularly aggressive." They continued in silence for another hour, completing the western arc of their patrol route without incident. Lana was just beginning to relax when Keth returned from a scouting run, feathers bristling with agitation. "Movement to the east," the Trias reported, voice low and urgent. "Large biosignature, moving fast." "Heading?" Maru demanded, already signaling the rear guards to form a defensive position. "Toward the marshlands," Keth replied. "But it's erratic. Might be injured or hunting." Maru chittered something in his native language that the translator didn't catch. Probably a curse. "We need to adjust our route. The eastern path takes us too close to the marsh tonight." "Isn't that outside our patrol sector anyway?" Lana asked, recalling the warning about Maja territory. "Technically, yes," Maru acknowledged. "But we've been monitoring increased activity from the Kreks on the far side of the marshlands. Intelligence suspects they may be setting up a forward operating base." The Creks. Lana had been briefed on the rival coalition, a loose alliance of species opposed to the Xeno Alliance's expansion. They weren't officially at war, but skirmishes along the frontier were common enough that every outpost maintained a constant state of readiness. So we're supposed to skirt the marshes without entering Maja territory while watching for Creks activity, Lana clarified. Precisely, Maru said. Simple, yes? Before Lana could reply, a thunderous roar shattered the night, so powerful that she felt it reverberate in her chest cavity. The sound was followed by a high-pitched keening and the unmistakable sound of vegetation being violently displaced. Contact! Keth hissed, dropping into a crouch. Large predator. Engaging. Something. Defensive formation, Maru ordered, his voice remarkably calm. Prepare to withdraw to the perimeter. The patrol formed a tight circle, weapons aimed outward. Lana's heart hammered in her chest as she strained to see through the darkness. Her helmet's night vision enhancement painted the world in ghostly greens and blues, but the dense undergrowth limited visibility to just a few dozen yards. Another roar split the night, closer this time, followed by a desperate, chittering cry that sounded disturbingly like a Psylocke in distress. That's Grell, one of the rear guards exclaimed. He was on Eastern Patrol tonight. Hold position, Maru commanded, but the guard was already moving, breaking formation to rush toward the sound. Tadix, stand down, Maru barked, but the Psylocke ignored him, disappearing into the undergrowth. Damn it, Maru hissed. Keth, with me. Lieutenant, you and Zex hold this position. That's an order. Before Lana could protest, Maru and Keth were gone, leaving her alone with the remaining Psylocke guard. She glanced at Zex, whose mandibles were clicking rapidly in what she recognized as anxiety. Should we? She began, but was interrupted by a scream that could only have come from Tadix, followed by the most terrifying sound Lana had ever heard. A low, rumbling growl that seemed to come from everywhere at once, vibrating up through the ground and into her bones. Maja, Zex whispered, his exoskeleton visibly trembling. Lana made a split-second decision. We can't just stand here. They need help. Orders, Zex began. Can be damned, Lana finished, already moving in the direction of the commotion. She heard Zex chittering in distress behind her, but she didn't slow down. The undergrowth grew thicker as she approached the edge of the marshlands, vines and thorny plants tugging at her uniform. The sounds of combat grew louder, the distinctive whine of pulse rifles, more chittering cries, and underlying it all, that bone-shaking growl. Lana burst into a small clearing and froze at the scene before her. A massive creature stood in the center of the marshy ground, its body a nightmarish combination of reptile and insect. It stood on 6 powerful legs, with a segmented body covered in armored plates. But it was the head that stole Lana's breath away. A huge, wedge-shaped skull, dominated by a massive jaw, lined with teeth the size of combat knives. 2 smaller secondary jaws extended from the sides of its main maw, each capable of snapping a human in half. The Maw-jaw had one of these secondary jaws clamped around what Lana recognized as a Psylocke arm, while Maru and Keth fired desperately at its armored hide. Their pulse blasts seemed to do little more than annoy the creature, which whipped its tail in agitation, sending Tadix flying into a nearby tree with a sickening crunch. Fall back, Maru was shouting. It's got Grell! We can't help him now! But Lana could see that the captured Psylocke was still alive, his free arm weakly attempting to strike at the predator's eyes. Without conscious thought, Lana found herself charging forward, her rifle forgotten as she reached for the combat knife at her belt. Lieutenant, no! Keth shrieked, but Lana was beyond hearing. She had read the biological reports. She knew that the Maw-jaw hunted by sound, using infrasonic pulses to track prey movements. And she knew that when they attacked, they used overwhelming acoustic force to stun their victims. 2 could play at that game. As she closed in on the massive predator, Lana activated her helmet's external amplifier, a system designed for communication in high-noise environments. Then, drawing on her academy training in xenobiological response patterns, she let out the loudest, most guttural roar she could manage. The sound, amplified and directed by her helmet systems, slammed into the Maja like a physical force. The creature jerked back, its primary eyes swiveling toward this new threat. For a split second, predator and human locked gazes, and Lana was struck by an unexpected intelligence in those multifaceted orbs. Taking advantage of the momentary distraction, Lana darted forward and drove her combat knife into the soft tissue where the secondary jaw joined the creature's head. The Maja let out a shriek of pain and released Grell, who collapsed to the ground in a broken heap. "Get him out of here!" Lana shouted to Maru, who had frozen in shock at her suicidal charge. "Go!" The Maja recovered quickly, whipping its massive head toward Lana with frightening speed. She barely managed to dodge the primary jaw as it snapped shut inches from her face. The displaced air enough to knock her backward into the mud. Certain that death was moments away, Lana did the only thing she could think of. She roared again, this time modulating the sound to mimic the infrasonic patterns she'd studied in the Maja's own hunting calls. The effect was immediate and bewildering. The creature stopped its attack, head tilting in what could only be described as confusion. Its secondary jaws retracted slightly, and it made a low, rumbling sound that Lana's translator couldn't interpret. Slowly, carefully, Lana rose to her feet, maintaining eye contact with the predator. She kept her posture straight, remembering from her studies that many apex predators responded to dominance displays. The Maja's 6 legs shifted restlessly, but it made no move to attack. "Lieutenant!" Maru called from the edge of the clearing, where he and Keth were supporting the injured Grell. "Whatever you're doing, stop doing it and retreat, now." But Lana couldn't move. She was locked in some kind of primal communication with the creature, a connection that defied rational explanation. Slowly, she began to back away, maintaining her aggressive posture and occasionally emitting low-frequency growls through her helmet's amplifier. To her astonishment, the Maja began to follow her, maintaining a distance of about 10 feet, not pursuing like a predator, but following like, well, the comparison that came to mind was absurd, but it reminded her of a puppy following its master. "What in the 7 hells?" she heard Keth mutter as she rejoined the patrol, the massive predator still trailing behind her at a respectful distance. "I don't know," Lana whispered, afraid that any sudden movement or sound might break whatever strange spell had fallen over the creature. "But I think it's imprinted on me somehow." "Impossible," Maru said flatly, though his mandibles were clicking in what Lana now recognized as extreme agitation. Majas are solitary apex predators. They don't form social bonds, and they certainly don't imprint on other species. "Tell that to him," Lana replied, gesturing at the creature that was now sitting on its haunches, watching them with unblinking eyes. "We need to get Grell back to the outpost," Keth interjected, practical as always. "He's losing hemolymph fast." Maru chittered in frustration. "Fine, Lieutenant. Whatever you've done, undo it. We can't bring that thing back to Aegis." "I don't think I can undo it," Lana admitted. "But maybe it will lose interest if I stop acknowledging it." She turned and began walking briskly toward the outpost, deliberately keeping her back to the Maja. The patrol followed, with Maru and Keth supporting Grell between them. They had gone perhaps 50 yards when Lana risked a glance over her shoulder. The Maja was still following, maintaining the same careful distance. "This is unprecedented," Keth murmured, fascination overcoming fear. "It's behaving like a syngnathic bond has formed." "A what?" Lana asked, keeping her voice low. "A cross-species symbiotic relationship," the Trias explained. "Some predator species on my homeworld form temporary hunting partnerships with unrelated species. But this is something else entirely. It's a problem is what it is, Maru cut in. Captain Korvac is going to have my carapace for a wall decoration when we show up with a Maja in tow. As they approached the perimeter of Outpost Aegis, Lana could see the alert lights flashing. Their approach had been detected, and no doubt the presence of the massive predator behind them had triggered every defense system in the compound. Lieutenant Reeves, a stern voice crackled over her comm unit. You have approximately 10 seconds to explain why you are leading a Class A indigenous predator to my outpost before I authorize lethal force. Lana swallowed hard. Captain Korvac, sir, request permission to enter with, a new research subject. I believe I've established a connection with the Maja that could provide valuable insights into their behavior and biology. There was a long pause, during which Lana could imagine the captain's expression, assuming his species had expressions comparable to human ones. Maru, Korvac finally said, is the lieutenant suffering from swamp fever, or is she actually in control of that monstrosity? I cannot say for certain, sir, Maru replied carefully. But the creature has followed her from the eastern marshes without displaying aggressive behavior, and we have wounded requiring immediate medical attention. Another pause. Longer this time. Enter through the south gate. Medical teams are standing by. Lieutenant Reeves, you will keep that creature outside the perimeter, or I will personally feed you to it. Is that understood? Yes, sir, Lana replied, relief washing through her. Thank you, sir. As they approached the south gate, Lana turned to face the Maja, which had stopped a few yards back, seemingly wary of the outpost's barrier lights. Stay, she said firmly, using both her voice and the low-frequency emitter to reinforce the command. To her surprise, and obvious relief of the security team watching from the walls, the creature settled onto its haunches, its massive head tilting in that curious, almost dog-like manner. Remarkable, Keth whispered as they passed through the gate, which promptly sealed behind them. Absolutely remarkable. Or absolutely insane, Maru muttered. But Lana caught the undertone of reluctant admiration in the Psylocke's voice. As medical personnel rushed forward to attend to Grell and the other injured, Lana felt a heavy hand descend on her shoulder. She turned to find herself face to face, or rather, face to chest, with Captain Korvac. The Dreth captain towered over her, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the emergency lights in faceted patterns. His forearms were crossed in what Lana recognized as the universal posture of authority figures about to deliver a dressing down. Lieutenant Reeves, Korvac rumbled, his translator rendering his native clicks and hums into a deep baritone. In the entire history of this outpost, no one has ever brought a Maja home like a stray pet. Congratulations on being the first, and possibly the last, to achieve this distinction. Lana straightened to attention, acutely aware of the mud coating her uniform and the various scratches and bruises she'd accumulated during the encounter. Sir, I can explain. Oh, I'm counting on it, Korvac interrupted. My office. 10 minutes. After you've been cleared by medical. He glanced past her at the massive predator still waiting patiently beyond the gate. And bring a solution for that. 10 minutes stretched to 30 as the medical team insisted on a full examination, concerned about potential exposure to the numerous parasites and toxins endemic to the Varka 7 marshlands. By the time Lana was cleared and made her way to the captain's office, she had formulated what she hoped was a coherent explanation for her actions. Korvac's office reflected its occupant, austere, functional, and imposing. The captain himself sat behind a desk fashioned from some kind of polished stone, his crystalline form seeming to grow directly from the chair rather than sitting on it. Maru stood to one side, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Lieutenant, Korvac acknowledged as she entered. "I've reviewed Patrol Leader Maru's preliminary report. Would you care to elaborate on how you managed to tame a creature that has killed 27 Alliance personnel since this outpost was established?" Lana took a deep breath. "Sir, I wouldn't say I tamed it. Based on my studies of xenobiology, I believe I triggered a dominance recognition response. The Maja uses infrasonic pulses to communicate territorial boundaries. When it attacked our patrol, I used my helmet's amplifier to mimic those signals, essentially challenging its dominance display with one of my own. And instead of killing you, it... what? Decided to follow you home?" Korvac's tone made it clear how ridiculous he found this explanation. "Actually, yes," Lana replied, warming to her subject. Many apex predators follow specific behavioral patterns. If their dominance is challenged successfully, they may defer to the challenger. I think that's what happened here. I successfully out-Majawed the Maja. Korvac's crystalline structure vibrated in what Lana had learned was the Dreth equivalent of a sigh. "Lieutenant, while your quick thinking may have saved lives tonight, you've created a significant problem. That creature outside our gates is the apex predator of this ecosystem. Removing it from its territory could have unpredictable consequences for the local food chain." "I'm not suggesting we keep it permanently, sir," Lana countered. "But this presents an unprecedented research opportunity. No one has ever been able to study a Maja up close before. The insights we could gain about their biology, behavior, and communication patterns could be invaluable." "And what happens when your research subject decides it's hungry and you look like dinner?" Maru interjected. "I believe I can maintain the dominance bond," Lana insisted. "At least long enough to gather significant data." Korvac was silent for a long moment, the facets of his crystalline form shifting colors as he considered. "Finally," he said, "Lieutenant Reeves, you are aware of the Alliance mandate regarding indigenous life forms, correct? Minimal interference with native ecosystems," Lana recited. "Observation and study only, except in cases of direct threat to Alliance personnel or installations." "Precisely," Korvac said. "By all rights, I should order that creature terminated as a potential threat to this outpost." Lana felt a surge of protective indignation that surprised her with its intensity. "Sir, with all due respect, the Maja hasn't shown any aggression since our initial encounter. Killing it would be unnecessary," Korvac finished for her, raising one crystalline hand. "At least for now. Dr. Zeltanis has already approached me about the research potential. She's quite enthusiastic about the opportunity." Relief flooded through Lana. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet, Lieutenant," Korvac warned. "You've bonded with this creature, so you're responsible for it. If it so much as growls at another member of this outpost, I will order it destroyed immediately, and you'll be on the first transport back to Alliance space with a permanent mark in your record. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear, sir," Lana replied, wincing internally at the unintentional pun given the captain's physiology. "Good. Now, work with Dr. Zeltanis to develop a proper containment and research protocol. I want that thing secured by morning." Korvac made a dismissive gesture. "And, Lieutenant, the next time you decide to adopt the local wildlife, perhaps start with something smaller." Dismissed. As Lana exited the administration building, she paused at the sight that greeted her. The Maja was still sitting exactly where she'd left it, but now it was surrounded by a semicircle of curious, off-duty personnel, keeping a respectful distance but clearly fascinated by the predator's uncharacteristic docility. Among them was a slender, serpentine figure that Lana recognized as Dr. Zeltanis, the outpost's lead xenobiologist. The Serpenxi scientist was gesturing excitedly with her upper limbs, while her lower body coiled and uncoiled, in what Lana had learned indicated intense intellectual excitement. "Lieutenant Reeves," Dr. Zeltanis called, as she spotted Lana. "This is extraordinary. A mature Maja specimen, displaying non-aggressive behavior in proximity to potential prey species. My preliminary scans indicate normal vital signs. It's not ill or injured in any way that might explain this behavioral anomaly. It's imprinted on the lieutenant, Keth said, stepping forward from the gathered crowd. Like a syngnathic bond, but cross-species. Dr. Zeltanis's multifaceted eyes widened. Fascinating. Is that your hypothesis as well, Lieutenant? Lana approached the edge of the perimeter, noting how the Maja's attention immediately fixed on her, its massive head tilting in that now familiar gesture of recognition. I think it's responding to the dominance display I performed during our encounter. I mimicked its infrasonic communication patterns. Brilliant improvisation, the doctor enthused, her translator barely keeping up with her excited hissing. We must set up a proper research protocol immediately. Controlled interactions, physiological monitoring, behavioral tests. Captain Korvac wants it contained by morning, Lana informed her, watching as the Maja shifted its weight. 6 powerful legs adjusting its position as if it were settling in for a long wait. Contained? But that would invalidate half the potential observations, Dr. Zeltanis protested. The value is in studying how it interacts with its environment and with you in a natural setting. I don't think the captain is going to allow a 12-foot apex predator to roam freely around the outpost, Lana pointed out dryly. The doctor's scales rippled in what Lana recognized as the Serpenxi equivalent of a dismissive snort. Bureaucrats, always interfering with science. She coiled thoughtfully. Perhaps a compromise. We could establish a secured observation area adjacent to the outpost, close enough for safety protocols, but with sufficient space for the specimen to display natural behaviors. And where would we get the resources for that? Maru asked, mandibles clicking skeptically. Outpost Aegis isn't exactly flush with spare materials or labor. Dr. Zeltanis's eyes gleamed. Leave that to me. I've been requesting additional research facilities since we established this outpost. Now, I have the perfect justification. She turned to Lana. Lieutenant, can you maintain your connection with the specimen until we can make proper arrangements? Lana looked at the Maja, which gazed back with an unsettling intelligence. I think so, but I'm not sure how long the imprinting will last. This is uncharted territory. All the more reason to proceed quickly, the doctor said, already tapping notes into her datapad. Meet me at Research Module 3 in 1 hour. We'll establish baseline parameters for your interaction protocols. With that, she slithered away, still muttering excitedly into her recording device. You've made quite an impression on your first day, Keth observed, feathered crest rippling in amusement. Not everyone manages to bring home a new pet and upend the entire research division in one patrol. It's not a pet, Lana protested, though she couldn't help feeling a strange affinity for the massive predator. It's a temporary research subject. Tell that to him, Keth replied, gesturing at the Maja, which had settled into what looked remarkably like a relaxed lounging position, its primary eyes half closed, but still fixed on Lana. He looks like he's planning to stay. Lana sighed, wondering what she'd gotten herself into. Well, at least no one can say humans aren't adaptable. No, Maru agreed, his tone unreadable. They certainly can't say that anymore. The next week passed in a blur of activity, as Dr. Zeltanis marshaled resources to construct what she grandly termed the Xenopredator research enclosure, but what everyone else quickly dubbed Pup's Pen. The nickname for the Maja itself, Pup, had emerged spontaneously among the outpost personnel and stuck despite Lana's half-hearted protests that it was an apex predator, not a cute domestic animal. To everyone's surprise, the Maja remained docile and responsive to Lana's commands, though it showed little interest in other personnel. It accepted food placed within its reach, primarily synthesized protein blocks, as Dr. Zeltanis vetoed Maru's suggestion that they feed it live prey, and seemed content to spend hours watching the outpost activities from its position just outside the perimeter. The behavioral implications are revolutionary, Dr. Zeltanis enthused during one of their daily research sessions. Every previous encounter with Mahja's has resulted in aggression and territorial defense. Yet this specimen displays clear signs of social bonding, following your movements, responding to your vocalizations, even exhibiting what could be interpreted as protective behavior. This last observation had come after an incident where a malfunctioning cargo loader had nearly crushed Lana beneath a falling supply crate. The Mahja had reacted with startling speed, roaring and charging at the perimeter barrier, not breaking through, but clearly agitated by the perceived threat to her. "I still don't understand why it responded to me specifically," Lana admitted, watching as the creature rolled onto its back in a patch of sunlight, exposing the softer scales of its underbelly in a display of vulnerability that would have been unthinkable for a wild Mahja. Was it just the infrasonic mimicry, or is there something more? Perhaps a combination of factors, the doctor speculated, her coils shifting thoughtfully. The timing of your encounter, your specific vocal patterns, perhaps even your biochemistry. Mahjas have highly developed olfactory senses in addition to their acoustic hunting adaptations. "So I smell good to it?" Lana asked, half joking. "In a manner of speaking, perhaps," Dr. Zeltanis replied seriously. "Cross-species recognition often involves multiple sensory inputs. Your performance of dominance behaviors may have triggered the initial response, but the ongoing bond suggests something more fundamental." Before Lana could pursue this line of questioning, her comm unit buzzed with an incoming message. "Lieutenant Reeves, report to Training Ground Alpha immediately. Bring your research subject." Captain Korvac's tone made it clear this wasn't a request. "That doesn't sound good," Lana muttered, deactivating her comm. "I'd better go see what the captain wants." "I'll accompany you," Dr. Zeltanis offered, already gathering her instruments. "If this involves pup, I should be present as the scientific authority." Lana nodded gratefully, then approached the edge of the perimeter where the Mahja was still lounging. "Hey, pup," she called, using both her voice and the low-frequency emitter she now carried at all times. "Time to move." The creature immediately rolled to its feet, its massive head swinging toward her with that now familiar tilt of attentiveness. Lana had discovered that while the Mahja responded to vocal commands, it was the infrasonic patterns that really seemed to communicate her intentions. She'd spent hours working with Dr. Zeltanis to develop a rudimentary language of signals that the creature consistently responded to. "Follow!" she commanded, sending the appropriate infrasonic pulse. The Mahja fell into step behind her as she headed toward Training Ground Alpha, maintaining a respectful distance but clearly alert to her movements. Training Ground Alpha was a cleared area on the western edge of the outpost, used for combat drills and weapons testing. As Lana approached, she saw Captain Korvac standing with a group of security personnel, all armed with heavy pulse rifles. Her heart sank at the implications. "Lieutenant," Korvac acknowledged as she arrived, his crystalline form reflecting the midday sun in sharp, uncomfortable patterns. "Dr. Zeltanis, I see you've brought your project." "As requested, sir," Lana replied, keeping her tone neutral despite her growing concern. "May I ask why?" "You may," Korvac said, gesturing to the assembled security team. "I've received reports about your pup's supposed protective behavior. I want to see it demonstrated under controlled conditions." "With all due respect, Captain," Dr. Zeltanis interjected, her scales flushing with indignation. "The specimen is still adjusting to captivity. Subjecting it to stress tests could disrupt the socialization process we've been carefully cultivating." "This isn't a request, Doctor," Korvac said firmly. "If this creature is going to remain at my outpost, I need to know exactly what it's capable of, and what control the lieutenant actually has over it." Lana stepped forward. What kind of demonstration did you have in mind, sir? Korvac gestured to a series of training dummies positioned around the field. A simple exercise. We'll simulate various threat scenarios using the automated targeting systems. I want to see how the creature responds, and more importantly, if it can be controlled when it does. Lana glanced at Dr. Zeltanis, who was clearly unhappy, but gave a reluctant nod. Very well, sir, but I should note that Pup, the Mahjong, has shown no aggression toward outpost personnel. Its protective behaviors have been limited to perceived threats to me specifically. Noted, Korvac said dryly. Which is why you'll be the target in these simulations. What? Lana and Dr. Zeltanis exclaimed simultaneously. Don't worry, Lieutenant, Korvac assured her, though his tone wasn't particularly reassuring. The simulations will be non-lethal. Mostly. Before Lana could protest further, Korvac activated his comm unit. Begin Scenario 1. The training field hummed to life as holographic projectors activated, creating the illusion of a dense forest environment. Lana found herself standing in what appeared to be a clearing, with the Mahjong a few yards behind her. The creature's head swiveled as it took in the changed surroundings, but it showed no signs of distress. Scenario 1. Ambush, Korvac announced from beyond the holographic tree line. Lieutenant, proceed to the marker. A glowing blue dot appeared on the ground about 20 yards ahead. Lana began walking toward it, signaling the Mahjong to follow. As she reached the marker, the ground beneath her feet suddenly gave way, revealing a concealed pit. It was shallow, only about 3 feet deep, but the surprise of it sent her stumbling forward with a startled cry. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. The Mahjong let out a thunderous roar that shook the very air, charging forward with frightening speed. As Lana scrambled to her feet, she saw the creature positioning itself between her and the pit, its massive body forming a living barrier as it scanned for threats. Pup, stand down, Lana commanded, using both vocal and infrasonic signals. I'm okay, stand down. To her relief, and obvious surprise of the watching security team, the Mahjong immediately ceased its aggressive display, though it remained alert and watchful. Impressive, Korvac's voice came from beyond the holographic forest. But let's try something more challenging. Scenario 2. Direct threat. The holographics shifted, and suddenly, a group of armed figures materialized at the edge of the clearing. They were featureless humanoids, but they carried what appeared to be weapons aimed directly at Lana. These are non-sentient projections, Korvac assured her, but they'll fire low-yield stun pulses. Nothing dangerous, but they'll sting. Before Lana could respond, the holographic attackers opened fire. She felt the sting of the training pulses. Little more than static shocks, really. But the Mahjong's reaction was anything but proportional. The creature went berserk, charging through the holographic attackers with a fury that made even the seasoned security personnel step back. Its massive jaws snapped at the insubstantial figures, and when they predictably had no effect, it switched tactics, positioning its armored body to shield Lana from the simulated weapons fire. Pup! Enough! Lana shouted, struggling to be heard over the creature's continuous roaring. She amplified her infrasonic command to maximum, sending a pulse so strong she could feel it resonating in her own chest cavity. The effect was immediate. The Mahjong froze, its massive head swinging toward her, awaiting further instruction. Stand down, she commanded, pointing to a spot a few feet away. Guard position. The creature obeyed, moving to the indicated position and settling into a watchful crouch, though its eyes remained fixed on the holographic attackers with unmistakable hostility. The holograms faded, and Captain Korvac stepped onto the field, accompanied by Dr. Zeltanis and the security team. Most impressive, Lieutenant, Korvac conceded, his crystalline structure shifting in what Lana had learned indicated grudging respect. The creature shows both protective instinct and responsiveness to your commands. even in a high-stress situation. Its primary motivation appears to be defense, not aggression, Dr. Zeltanis pointed out, her scientific enthusiasm overtaking her earlier concerns. Note how it positioned itself between the lieutenant and the perceived threats, rather than pursuing the attackers beyond the immediate danger zone. A useful trait, Korvac mused, studying the now docile Maja with new interest. Perhaps there's more to this research project than I initially thought. Sir? Lana asked, not liking the speculative tone in the captain's voice. The Alliance is always seeking advantages in our ongoing diplomatic tensions with the Kreks, Korvac explained. A native predator that can be controlled and directed could prove valuable in certain scenarios. Dr. Zeltanis' scales flushed with indignation. Captain, the specimen is a research subject, not a potential weapon. The ethical implications alone are a matter for command to decide, Korvac interrupted. For now, continue your research. Doctor, Lieutenant, you've demonstrated adequate control. You're authorized to continue the program. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. I'm assigning you to permanent patrol duty along the eastern perimeter. If one Maja can be befriended, perhaps others can as well. As the captain and his security team departed, Lana exchanged a concerned look with Dr. Zeltanis. I don't like where this is heading, the xenobiologist admitted, her coils tightening anxiously. Pup is a unique case, potentially a genetic anomaly, or the result of very specific circumstances. The captain's suggestion that we could replicate this bonding with other Majas is scientifically unsound and potentially dangerous. Lana nodded, reaching out to stroke the armored plates along the Maja's neck, a gesture she'd discovered the creature seemed to enjoy. I agree. And I didn't sign up to turn native wildlife into weapons. What will you do? Dr. Zeltanis asked. Lana watched as the Maja leaned into her touch, its massive head tilting to expose the softer scales beneath its jaw ridge. For now, we continue as planned. We study pup, learn what we can about Maja behavior and biology, and we document everything, the science, not the military applications. And if the captain insists on weaponization, Lana's expression hardened. Then I'll remind him that my bond with pup is unique. If he wants the Maja's cooperation, he needs mine. She glanced at the creature, which gazed back with that unsettling intelligence. And I won't cooperate with turning pup into a weapon. Dr. Zeltanis' scales rippled in what Lana had learned was approval. A principled stance, Lieutenant. I hope it doesn't come to that. So do I, Lana murmured, leading the Maja back toward its enclosure. So do I. The following weeks settled into a routine of research, training, and patrol duties. Dr. Zeltanis' team made remarkable progress in understanding Maja biology, while Lana refined her command system to include more complex instructions. The creature proved surprisingly intelligent, capable of learning new signals and even improvising responses to novel situations. More remarkable still was the deepening of the bond between human and predator. Pup began to display behaviors that Dr. Zeltanis described as almost domesticated, seeking out Lana's company, bringing her objects from its enclosure as apparent gifts, and even allowing her to examine its injuries after a territorial dispute with a wild Maja during a patrol of the eastern perimeter. The neurological implications are fascinating, Dr. Zeltanis explained during one of their regular debriefings. The specimen's brain scans show increased activity in regions associated with social recognition and bonding, areas we previously thought were vestigial in Majas, given their solitary nature. So it's actually forming an emotional attachment? Lana asked, watching as Pup dozed in the afternoon sun, its massive body curled protectively around the perimeter of the research area where she sat. I would hesitate to anthropomorphize, the doctor cautioned. But yes, There appears to be a neurochemical response similar to what we would term attachment in more social species. When you're present, the specimen's stress hormones decrease, and its brain produces analogs to what humans would call oxytocin and dopamine. Lana felt an unexpected warmth at this confirmation of what she'd intuitively sensed. Despite her initial fear, she'd grown genuinely fond of the massive predator, finding its loyalty and protective nature endearing despite its fearsome appearance. "Lieutenant Reeves," Captain Korvac's voice crackled over her comm unit, interrupting her thoughts. "Report to command immediately. Priority Alpha." Lana exchanged a concerned look with Dr. Zeltanis. Priority Alpha meant a potential security threat to the outpost. "On my way, sir," she replied, rising quickly. "Doctor, can you—" "I'll monitor Pup," the xenobiologist assured her. "Go." As Lana hurried toward the command center, she noted increased activity throughout the outpost, security personnel moving with purpose, weapons at the ready, and technical crews securing equipment. Whatever was happening, it was serious. Captain Korvac stood at the central holographic display when she entered the command center, his crystalline form rigid with tension. Maru and several other senior officers were gathered around, studying what appeared to be surveillance imagery of the eastern marshlands. "Lieutenant," Korvac acknowledged her arrival without looking up. "We have a situation. Long-range sensors have detected Krek's activity in Sector 7, the far side of the Maja territory." "What kind of activity, sir?" Lana asked, studying the holographic display. The imagery showed what appeared to be a small installation under construction in a clearing near the edge of the marshes. "Based on the energy signatures, they're setting up a signal relay of some kind," Maru explained, mandibles clicking in agitation. "But the composition is unusual. The frequencies they're testing match the infrasonic range used by the local predators." A cold feeling settled in Lana's stomach. "They're trying to control the Majas." "That's our assessment," Korvac confirmed grimly. "If they succeed, they could potentially direct a pack of apex predators straight at this outpost. Our defenses are designed to repel conventional attacks, not a biological assault of this nature." "Have you reported this to Alliance Command?" Lana asked. "Communications are being jammed," one of the technical officers reported. "We're limited to short-range transmissions only. The nearest Alliance patrol is 3 days out at best." Korvac's crystalline form shifted colors, a sign of deep concern. "We need to disable that relay before they can activate it fully. Unfortunately, its location makes a direct assault problematic. The Kreks have positioned it in the heart of Maja hunting grounds. Any conventional approach would be detected by either their sensors or the predators themselves." "Unless—" Maru began, then trailed off, looking at Lana with what she recognized as reluctance. "Unless what?" she prompted. "Unless we use your connection with the Maja," Korvac finished. "You and your pup could potentially approach the relay through territories that would be fatal to a standard patrol." Lana felt conflicted. On one hand, she'd been adamant about not weaponizing her connection with Pup. On the other, this was clearly a defensive action to protect the outpost, and potentially the Majas themselves from Krek's control. "What exactly would you need me to do?" she asked carefully. "Lead a small team through the marshlands to the relay installation," Korvac explained. "Your Maja would serve as both guide and deterrent to the wild population. Once there, our technical specialists would disable the relay, while you and a security detail provide protection." "It's a high-risk operation," Maru added, his concern evident. "But potentially our only option given the jamming and our isolated position." Lana thought for a moment, weighing the implications. "I'll do it," she finally said. "But I have conditions." Korvac's crystalline structure vibrated slightly, a sign of surprise or possibly irritation. "Which are?" "First, Pup is not expendable. The mission parameters must prioritize its safety as well as the team's. Second, after this mission, All military applications of my research with Dr. Zeltanis are officially terminated. We continue as a pure scientific study, not a weapons development program." The command center fell silent as Korvac considered her demands. "Finally," he said, "your first condition is accepted. The Mahjaw's unique abilities make it a valuable asset worth preserving. As for the second—" He paused, then continued reluctantly. "Agreed, but only if the mission succeeds. If we fail here, all options remain on the table." Lana nodded, knowing it was the best compromise she was likely to get. "When do we leave?" 2 hours, Korvac replied. "Assemble your team. No more than 5, including yourself. Maru will lead security. Choose the rest based on the skill sets you think will be most valuable." As the meeting dispersed, Maru approached Lana with an uncharacteristic hesitation in his movements. "Lieutenant, are you certain about this? The eastern marshes are dangerous enough during daylight patrol. A covert night operation, penetrating deep into Mahjaw territory." "No, I'm not certain," Lana admitted. "But I am confident in Pup's abilities, and in yours." She offered what she hoped was a reassuring smile. "Besides, you're the one who placed a bet I wouldn't last 4 patrols. I'm not about to prove you right now." Maru's mandibles clicked in what she now recognized as his version of surprised laughter. "Fair enough, Lieutenant. I'll prepare the security detail. 2 hours at the East Gate." As Maru left, Lana took a moment to study the holographic display showing the Krex installation. It was nestled in a particularly dense section of the marshlands, surrounded by terrain that would be challenging even without the threat of predators. This would be no easy mission, even with Pup's assistance. With a deep breath, she turned and headed back to the research enclosure. She had a lot to explain to Dr. Zeltanis and to Pup. 2 hours later, Lana stood at the eastern gate with her hastily assembled team. Maru led the security detail, accompanied by Keth, whose trias sensory abilities would be invaluable in the dense marshlands. The technical specialist was a Vexian named Zor, whose 6-limb dexterity and natural affinity for electronic systems made them the obvious choice for disabling the Krex relay. And then there was Pup, pacing restlessly just beyond the perimeter barrier, clearly sensing the tension in the air. "The plan is simple," Lana explained, activating a portable holographic map. "We follow this route through the marshes, avoiding the known Mahjaw hunting grounds where possible. Pup's presence should deter most territorial challenges, but we maintain stealth protocols at all times. When we reach the relay, Zor disables it while the rest of us provide security. Then we withdraw along the same route." "Estimated completion time?" Maru asked, checking his weapon systems. "If everything goes according to plan, 6 hours round trip," Lana replied. "We should be back before dawn." "And if everything doesn't go according to plan?" Keth asked, preening nervously at the feathers along one arm. "Then we improvise," Lana said with more confidence than she felt. "That's why I chose each of you. You're the best at what you do." As the gate slid open, Lana activated her comm unit. "Strike team to command. We're moving out." "Acknowledged. Strike team," Captain Korvac's voice replied. "Good hunting." Lana approached Pup, using her infrasonic emitter to send a series of command pulses that Dr. Zeltanis had helped her develop specifically for this mission. "Scout," she instructed, pointing toward the marshlands. "Find path." The Mahjaw tilted its massive head, seeming to consider the command, then turned and began moving toward the tree line at a pace the team could match. Lana followed, signaling the others to maintain formation behind her. As they entered the forest, the familiar sounds of Varka 7's nocturnal ecosystem enveloped them. The distant calls of arboreal hunters, the constant buzz of flying insects, and the occasional splash from the marshland pools. But there was a noticeable absence of the larger predator calls in their immediate vicinity, as if the local wildlife was giving Pup a wide berth. It's working, Keth whispered, feathered crest rippling with excitement. The indigenous predators are avoiding us. So far, Maru cautioned, his compound eyes scanning the darkness beyond their helmet lights. We're still in the transition zone. The true test will come when we reach the deep marshes. They moved in silence for the next hour, with Pup leading them along game trails and shallow water paths that Lana would never have found on her own. The massive predator seemed to intuitively understand their need for stealth, keeping to firmer ground and avoiding areas where their passage would create excessive noise. As they approached the heart of the marshlands, Lana felt a change in the atmosphere, a heaviness in the air, a sense of being watched from the shadows. Pup sensed it too, its head swiveling constantly, secondary jaws extending and retracting in what she now recognized as a warning display. "We're entering a territorial boundary," she whispered to the team. "Stay close and let Pup handle any challenges." As if on cue, a low, rumbling growl emanated from the darkness ahead, a sound that Lana had come to know all too well. Another Maw was nearby, and it had detected their presence. Pup stopped, its powerful body tensing as it let out an answering growl. Not aggressive, but assertive, establishing its presence and intent. Lana held her breath, watching as her companion engaged in what Dr. Zeltanis had termed acoustic negotiation with the unseen territorial holder. For several tense moments, the exchange continued, infrasonic pulses so powerful that Lana could feel them vibrating through the boggy ground beneath her feet. Then, abruptly, the challenger fell silent. "It's backing down," Lana whispered to the team, relief evident in her voice. "Pup has established dominance." "Remarkable," Zor murmured, their multifaceted eyes gleaming with scientific curiosity despite the tense situation. "Your specimen appears to have developed diplomatic skills alongside its bond with you." "Less admiration, more movement," Maru urged, gesturing for them to continue. "We're on a timetable." They pressed on, encountering 2 more territorial boundaries as they penetrated deeper into the marshlands. Each time, Pup successfully negotiated passage, sometimes with infrasonic exchanges alone, other times with brief physical displays that stopped short of actual combat. Finally, after nearly 3 hours of careful navigation, Keth signaled from their scouting position ahead. "Visual on the Krex installation," the Trias reported, voice barely above a whisper. 200 meters northeast, in a cleared area. Lana joined Keth at the edge of a stagnant pool, peering through the dense vegetation. In the distance, she could make out artificial lights and the angular shapes of prefabricated structures. The Krex relay station. "I count 8 personnel," Maru reported, his compound eyes better suited to the low light conditions. "Standard security pattern, minimal perimeter monitoring. They're relying on the natural deterrence of this environment." "Can we get closer without being detected?" Lana asked. Keth's feathered crest rippled thoughtfully. "There's a drainage channel that runs within 50 meters of the main structure. Pup could lead us through it without triggering their motion sensors." Lana nodded, then turned to Pup, who was watching her attentively. "Follow," she commanded with a specific infrasonic pattern that indicated stealth was required. "Quiet path." The Maw lowered its massive body closer to the ground. A behavior Lana had never observed before. It was actually making itself less visible, adapting to the mission parameters. The sight sent a surge of pride through her. They followed the drainage channel as Keth had suggested, moving slowly through knee-deep water to minimize sound. As they drew closer to the installation, the purpose of the Krex project became disturbingly clear. A massive dish-like structure dominated the clearing, pointed skyward, but clearly designed to broadcast rather than receive. "It's worse than we thought," Zor whispered, their manipulator limbs twitching with agitation. "That's not just a control relay. It's a full-spectrum infrasonic broadcaster." They could potentially control every Maja within 50 kilometers. "Can you disable it?" Lana asked, keeping a steadying hand on Pup's flank as the creature growled softly at the sight of the Krex. "Yes, but I'll need to access the main control node," Zor replied, studying the installation. "It appears to be in that central structure beneath the dish." "Guards?" Maru prompted. "2 at the perimeter. 3 inside based on heat signatures," Keth reported, their avian eyes narrowed in concentration. "Plus, whatever automated systems they've deployed." Lana considered their options. A direct assault would likely trigger alarms that could alert the main Krex forces, wherever they were based. Stealth was still their best approach, but they needed a distraction. "I have an idea," she said slowly, turning to look at Pup. "But it's risky, and it depends on how much control I actually have over our friend here." "I don't like where this is going," Maru muttered, mandibles clicking nervously. "Pup can create a distraction at the far side of the camp," Lana explained. "Something noisy but not immediately threatening, enough to draw the guards away from the control center so Zor can get inside." "And if the Krex have already developed countermeasures against Majas?" Keth asked. "That is the whole point of this installation, after all." "Then we move to Plan B, a direct assault," Lana replied grimly. "But I'd rather try this first." After a brief discussion of the details, they separated into 2 groups. Maru and Keth would accompany Zor to the edge of the clearing nearest the control center, while Lana would circle around with Pup to the opposite side. 20 minutes, Lana told them. "That's how long I'll try to keep their attention. If you haven't disabled the relay by then, I'll bring Pup back and we'll try something else." "Understood," Maru acknowledged. "Good luck, Lieutenant." As the others moved into position, Lana led Pup through the dense underbrush, circling wide around the Krex installation. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, not from exertion but from anxiety about what she was asking of her companion. "I hope you understand what we need," she murmured to the Maja as they reached their position. "Make noise, but don't attack unless they come after you. And above all, stay safe." Pup tilted its massive head, those intelligent eyes fixed on her face, as if trying to comprehend the nuances of her concern. Then, with a gentleness that still surprised her, it pressed its armored forehead against her shoulder in what had become their ritual gesture of affirmation. Lana smiled despite the tension of the moment. "Okay, big guy, show time." She pointed toward the edge of the clearing and sent a specific infrasonic command. "Roar, threaten, no attack." For a heartbeat, she feared the creature hadn't understood the complexity of the instruction. Then, Pup moved with shocking speed toward the clearing, its massive body tearing through the undergrowth with deliberate noise. As it reached the edge of the vegetation, it reared up on its hind legs, a posture Lana had never seen before, and let out a roar so powerful that she felt it in her bones despite being 30 yards away. The effect on the Krex camp was immediate and dramatic. Alarms blared, lights swiveled toward the disturbance, and the guards rushed to investigate, weapons raised. Pup continued its performance, prowling back and forth at the edge of the clearing, roaring and snapping its massive jaws, but never actually entering the open space or directly threatening the personnel. It was, Lana realized with a mixture of pride and amazement, putting on a show, creating exactly the distraction they needed without escalating to actual violence. The intelligence and restraint displayed by the creature was beyond anything she had expected. With the Krex guards distracted, Lana saw Maru's team darting across the opposite side of the clearing, Zor in the lead as they made for the control center. They disappeared inside just as one of the Krex guards fired a warning shot in Pup's direction, the energy pulse sizzling through the air above the Maja's head. Pup responded with another earth-shaking roar, but Lana could see it was becoming agitated by the weapon's fire. She sent a calming infrasonic pulse, urging restraint. The creature hesitated, clearly torn between its natural instinct to charge and her command to hold position. "Just a little longer," Lana whispered, though she knew Pup couldn't hear her at this distance. "Hold steady." The standoff continued for several tense minutes, with the Krex guards maintaining a defensive position, while Pup prowled and roared at the edge of the clearing. Lana could see them communicating urgently into their comm units, no doubt calling for reinforcements or activating whatever countermeasures they had developed. As if in response to her fears, a high-pitched whine began to emanate from the dish structure, rapidly descending into the infrasonic range until Lana could feel, rather than hear it, a powerful, pulsing signal that made her teeth ache and her vision blur. Pup's reaction was immediate and distressing. The massive predator staggered, its secondary jaws snapping open and closed involuntarily as it shook its head in obvious discomfort. A keening cry escaped its primary maw, a sound of confusion and pain that tore at Lana's heart. "They're activating the control system," she realized with horror. Even incomplete, the Krex technology was powerful enough to affect Pup at close range, if the signal reached full strength. Without hesitation, Lana broke cover, racing toward her distressed companion. "Pup, retreat!" she shouted, amplifying her voice with the infrasonic emitter at maximum strength. "To me, now!" For a terrible moment, the Mahjong didn't respond, its massive body trembling as it fought the influence of the Krex signal. Then, with visible effort, it turned toward her voice, taking one stumbling step in her direction before collapsing to its knees, head thrashing from side to side in distress. The Krex guards, spotting Lana's movement, redirected their weapons toward her. "Alliance personnel!" one of them shouted in the common trade language. "Surrender immediately!" Lana ignored them, focusing entirely on reaching Pup. The Krex signal was growing stronger by the second, and she could see other movement in the underbrush surrounding the clearing, wild Mahjaws, drawn by the signal and fighting its influence just as Pup was. "Zor, whatever you're doing in there, do it faster!" she hissed into her comm unit as she reached Pup's side, placing a hand on its trembling flank. "They've activated the system." "Working on it," came the terse reply. "Complex encryption. Bypassing security protocols. Need 2 more minutes." "We don't have 2 minutes," Lana snapped, watching as one of the wild Mahjaws lurched into the clearing, its movements jerky and uncoordinated, like a puppet on strings. The Krex guards turned their weapons toward this new threat, momentarily forgetting about Lana. In that instant of distraction, she made a decision. If the Krex could broadcast infrasonic signals to control the Mahjaws, perhaps she could counteract it with her own emissions, not to control, but to disrupt. She dialed her emitter to its maximum output and adjusted the frequency to create a discordant pattern that would interfere with the Krex signal. But, as her finger hovered over the activation button, she hesitated. At this range and intensity, the pulse might permanently damage Pup's sensitive hearing structures. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the suffering creature, "but I don't see another way." Before she could activate the device, however, Pup's massive head swung toward her, those intelligent eyes fixing on her face despite its obvious pain. And in that moment, Lana understood what she needed to do. She deactivated the emitter and instead placed both hands on either side of Pup's massive jaw, leaning in close until her forehead pressed against its armored skull in their familiar gesture of connection. Then, drawing on everything she had learned about Mahjong communication, she let out her own roar, not electronically amplified, but a raw, primal sound torn from the depths of her being. It wasn't as loud as a Mahjong's call, of course, but it contained the same infrasonic undertones, produced by the unique structure of her vocal cords, a human mimicking the language of an apex predator through sheer force of will and understanding. Pup went still, its trembling subsiding as it focused entirely on her. Then, remarkably, it joined its voice to hers, their combined roar creating a harmonic pattern that rippled through the air like a tangible force. The effect on the other Mahja's was immediate. The one that had entered the clearing stopped its jerky advance, head tilting as it listened to this new acoustic signal. Others emerged from the underbrush, drawn not by the Krek's technology, but by the natural call of one of their own kind, amplified and altered by its human companion. "What is this?" one of the Krek's guards demanded, weapon wavering between multiple targets as more Mahja's appeared at the edge of the clearing. "The control signal isn't working!" In the center of the growing circle of predators, Lana continued her improbable duet with Pup, their combined voices creating a counter-signal that somehow neutralized the Krek's technology. She could feel her throat burning with the effort, taste blood at the back of her mouth. But she didn't stop, instinctively understanding that this moment was crucial. Then, suddenly, the high-pitched whine of the Krek's signal cut off, plunging the clearing into acoustic silence, broken only by the ongoing roars of the gathered Mahja's. "Got it!" Zor's triumphant voice came through her comm unit. "Relay disabled and data captured. Primary systems offline." The Krek's guards, realizing they had lost control of both their technology and the situation, began a tactical retreat toward their landing craft at the far side of the clearing. The wild Mahja's, freed from the artificial signal, but still resonating with the natural one produced by Lana and Pup, watched with predatory intensity, but made no move to attack. "Status report." Maru's voice came through the comm as he and Keth emerged from the control center. Zor, clutching a data module that presumably contained the Krek's research. "Lieutenant, are you—" He stopped abruptly at the sight that greeted him. Lana, surrounded by a semicircle of the planet's apex predators, all eerily still and attentive. "I'm fine," Lana managed, her voice hoarse from the effort of her prolonged vocalization. "Just experiencing some unexpected reinforcements." As the Krek spacecraft lifted off, fleeing the compromised installation, the wild Mahja's began to disperse, returning to their territories now that the artificial signal was gone. Only Pup remained, sitting on its haunches beside Lana, with what could only be described as a satisfied expression. "What did you do?" Keth asked in awe, feathered crest fully extended in the trias display of astonishment. "How did you counter their signal?" Lana stroked Pup's armored neckplate, feeling the powerful muscles beneath, still trembling slightly from the experience. "I didn't counter it. We did. Pup and I created a harmonic resonance that somehow disrupted the artificial pattern. It was instinctive." "Fascinating," Zor murmured, their multifaceted eyes shifting through spectrums as they analyzed the phenomenon. "A spontaneous acoustic alliance between species. The implications are tremendous." "The implications can wait," Maru interjected, practical as always. "We need to report back to the outpost and secure this site before Krek's reinforcements arrive." Lana nodded, suddenly aware of her own exhaustion. Her throat burned, and every muscle ached from the intensity of their impromptu concert. "Pup, scout path," she commanded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Home." The Mahja tilted its massive head in acknowledgement, then rose and began leading them back through the marshes, choosing a more direct route now that stealth was less critical than speed. The other predators gave them a wide berth, perhaps still responding to whatever acoustic message had been embedded in their earlier performance. The return journey passed in a blur for Lana, who found herself leaning increasingly on Pup for support as fatigue and the after-effects of the intense vocalization took their toll. By the time the lights of Outpost Aegis appeared through the trees, she was barely staying upright. "Medical team to the east gate," Maru called ahead on the comm. "Lieutenant Reeves requires attention." "I'm fine," Lana protested weakly. "Just tired." "You've strained your vocal apparatus beyond recommended parameters," Zor observed clinically. "And your neural readings suggest significant stress from the infrasonic exposure." As they approached the perimeter, Lana saw Captain Korvac waiting at the gate, his crystalline form reflecting the emergency lights in sharp, aggressive patterns. Behind him stood Dr. Zeltanis, coils shifting anxiously as she spotted their approach. "Mission accomplished, sir," Maru reported as they reached the gate. "The Krex relay has been disabled, and we recovered their research data. Lieutenant Reeves and her companion were instrumental to our success." Korvac's crystalline structure shifted. Facets realigning in what Lana had learned indicated surprise. "Explain." As Maru summarized their encounter, Dr. Zeltanis slithered forward to examine Lana, her scientific instruments already scanning for injuries. "You performed sustained infrasonic vocalization?" the doctor asked incredulously. "Your human physiology shouldn't be capable of that." "Apparently, I'm full of surprises," Lana managed, wincing at the pain in her throat. She gestured to Pup, who had settled protectively beside her just outside the perimeter barrier. "He joined in. Together. We created some kind of counter-signal." "Acoustic symbiosis," Dr. Zeltanis breathed, her scales flushing with scientific excitement. "A genuine cross-species communication matrix. This is unprecedented." Captain Korvac approached, studying Lana with an unreadable expression. "Lieutenant, your actions tonight have safeguarded this outpost and potentially provided crucial intelligence on Krex operations in this sector." His crystalline form shifted again, this time into a configuration that Lana recognized as formal respect. "Well done." "Thank you, sir," Lana replied, startled by the unexpected praise. "About our agreement." Yes. Korvac waved a crystalline appendage dismissively. "Your research with Dr. Zeltanis will continue as a scientific endeavor, not a military application. Though I would point out that tonight's events demonstrated rather conclusively that the scientific and strategic value of your work are not mutually exclusive." Before Lana could respond, the medical team arrived, insisting she accompany them to the infirmary for treatment of her strained vocal cords and exposure to the Krex signal. As they led her away, she glanced back at Pup, still waiting patiently beyond the barrier. "He'll be here when you return," Dr. Zeltanis assured her. "I'll see to his needs in your absence." The next few days passed in a haze of medical treatments and debriefings. The data recovered from the Krex installation revealed the full scope of their plan. They had been developing technology to control not just the Mahjaws, but potentially all the apex predators of Varka 7th, intending to use the planet's own ecosystem as a weapon against Alliance outposts. "The acoustic algorithms are quite sophisticated," Zor explained during one of the briefings. Manipulator limbs gesturing at the complex diagrams displayed on the holographic projector. They identified the specific frequencies that stimulate the predator's aggression centers, while suppressing their territorial instincts, essentially turning them into living weapons. But Lieutenant Reeves and her Mahjaw disrupted the pattern, Captain Korvac observed. "How exactly?" Dr. Zeltanis coiled forward, scales rippling with excitement. "Based on our analysis of the recordings, they created a harmonic counterpoint, not blocking the Krex signal, but modifying it. The lieutenant's vocalizations provided the base pattern, while Pup's roars added complexity and power. Together, they essentially rewrote the message from attack to assemble and observe." "Could this be replicated?" Korvac asked, the tactical implications obvious in his tone. "Not easily," the doctor admitted. "The bond between the lieutenant and Pup appears to be unique, a product of their specific initial encounter and subsequent relationship development. We could potentially train other handlers, but it would require time and the right psychological profiles on both sides." Lana, still under orders to rest her voice, simply listened as the experts debated the implications of what had occurred. She found herself increasingly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation, the focus on applications and control rather than understanding and cooperation. Finally, when she was cleared to speak again, She requested a private meeting with Captain Korvac. To her surprise, he agreed immediately. "Lieutenant," he acknowledged as she entered his office. "Your recovery progresses well?" "Yes, sir," Lana replied, her voice still slightly hoarse but functional. "Thank you for seeing me." "You've earned the right to be heard," Korvac said simply, gesturing for her to take a seat. "What's on your mind?" Lana took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts. "Sir, I've been listening to the discussions about the Krex technology and our countermeasure. I'm concerned about the direction this is taking." "Explain," Korvac prompted, his crystalline structure shifting to what she now recognized as his neutral listening configuration. The Krex were attempting to control the Majas, to override their natural behaviors and turn them into weapons. Lana said carefully, "If we pursue similar research, even with defensive intentions, are we any better?" Korvac was silent for a long moment, facets reflecting the office lights in contemplative patterns. "An ethical concern," he finally acknowledged. "Not unexpected, given your species' particular sensitivity to such matters. With respect, sir, I don't think this is a human perspective," Lana countered. "The Alliance was founded on principles of cooperation and mutual respect among diverse species. Attempting to control another sentient species, even one not part of the Alliance, seems contrary to those principles. The Majas are predators, Lieutenant, not potential allies," Korvac pointed out. "Their intelligence, while impressive, is not comparable to sapient species." "Are we certain of that?" Lana challenged. "Pup has demonstrated problem-solving abilities, emotional responses, and communication skills far beyond what we initially believed possible. What if we're underestimating their potential?" Korvac shifted again, this time into what she recognized as his considering form. "You're suggesting we treat the Majas as a potentially sentient species, rather than wildlife to be managed. I'm suggesting we approach them with the same respect we'd want if we were the indigenous species, and someone else was the newcomer." Lana said, "My bond with Pup isn't about control. It's about communication and mutual benefit. That's what made our counter-signal effective against the Krex technology. Not domination, but partnership." The captain was silent again. Longer this time. Finally, his crystalline structure settled into a new configuration, one Lana hadn't seen before. "Your perspective has merit, Lieutenant, and it aligns with the deeper principles of the Alliance, even if our practical applications sometimes drift from the ideal." He rose, moving to the viewport that overlooked the research enclosure, where Pup was currently basking in the midday sun. "I will recommend to Command that our response to the Krex threat focus on defensive measures and improved understanding of indigenous species, rather than competing methods of control. Dr. Zeltanis's research will continue with its original scientific focus." Relief washed through Lana. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet," Korvac warned, turning back to face her. "Command may override my recommendation, and our agreement only applies to this outpost. I cannot speak for what other Alliance installations might pursue." "I understand," Lana acknowledged, "but it's a start." As she left the captain's office, Lana headed directly to the research enclosure, drawn by a need to see Pup after the days of separation during her recovery. The massive predator was waiting at the edge of the barrier, as if sensing her approach. As she came into view, it rose to its full height, secondary jaws extending in what she now recognized as its greeting display. "Hey there, big guy," she called, feeling a warmth spread through her chest at the creature's obvious recognition. "Miss me?" Pup responded with a gentle rumble that she felt more than heard, a sound that Dr. Zeltanis had described as unique to their interactions, never observed with other Majas or in any other context. As she approached the barrier, Dr. Zeltanis slithered up beside her, datapad in hand. "Lieutenant, perfect timing. I've been analyzing the recordings from the Krex encounter, and I've made a fascinating discovery about the harmonic patterns you and Pup created." "Oh?" Lana prompted, only half listening as she signaled for the barrier to allow her into the enclosure. "Yes. The specific frequency combination you generated wasn't just disruptive to the Krex signal. It appears to be a naturally occurring pattern in Maja social interactions, but one they use very rarely." The doctor's scales rippled with excitement. "Based on our limited observations of wild groups, it seems to be a gathering call, used only in specific circumstances, perhaps seasonal migrations or responses to environmental threats." Lana paused, hand halfway to the barrier control. "So we didn't create something new. We tapped into something that already existed in their communication repertoire." "Precisely," Dr. Zeltanis confirmed. "You didn't override their natural behavior. You activated a dormant social response. That's why the other Majas responded without aggression. You weren't controlling them. You were communicating with them in their own language." The significance of this revelation struck Lana forcefully. She hadn't dominated the Majas or imposed her will on them. She had spoken to them, and they had chosen to listen. The distinction was crucial, both practically and ethically. "Have you shared this with Captain Korvac?" she asked. "Not yet," the doctor admitted. "I wanted to confirm my analysis first, but this could fundamentally change our understanding of Maja social structures and intelligence." "It could change a lot more than that," Lana murmured, thinking of the implications for alliance policy toward indigenous species across all their frontier worlds. She activated the barrier control, stepping into the enclosure where Pup waited. The massive predator approached with surprising gentleness, lowering its head to press its armored forehead against her shoulder in their familiar greeting ritual. "We made quite a team out there," Lana said softly, stroking the sensitive scales beneath the creature's jaw ridge. "Showed everyone what's possible when we work together, instead of trying to control each other." Pup rumbled in response, a sound that seemed to carry understanding beyond what should have been possible for a mere animal. And in that moment, Lana felt a certainty that their partnership would change not just their own lives, but potentially the future of human-xeno relations within the Alliance. The following weeks saw a flurry of activity at Outpost Aegis. The Krex incident had drawn the attention of Alliance Command, resulting in increased security patrols and a formal investigation into the attempted use of biological weapons. To Lana's relief, Captain Korvac had maintained his commitment to treating the Maja research as a scientific rather than military endeavor, even under pressure from certain elements within command. Dr. Zeltanis' findings about Maja communication patterns had created a sensation in xenobiological circles, with specialists from across Alliance space requesting permission to observe Pup and the developing research program. The doctor had become fiercely protective of both Lana and her unusual companion, insisting that any visiting researchers respect the unique nature of their bond. "They are not laboratory specimens to be prodded and measured," she had declared during one particularly heated exchange with a visiting military scientist. "They are partners in an ongoing communicative relationship that requires trust and respect to maintain." Lana, for her part, found herself increasingly comfortable in her role as interspecies liaison. The patrols along the eastern perimeter continued, but now with a different purpose, establishing communication protocols with the wild Maja population rather than simply avoiding conflict. Progress was slow, but steady. While none of the wild Majas showed the same level of bonding that Pup had developed, they had become notably less aggressive toward Alliance patrols that included Lana and her companion. Several had even begun to exhibit recognition behaviors, acknowledging their presence with specific vocalizations rather than territorial threats. "It's as if they've accepted you as a kind of diplomatic representative," Keth observed during one patrol, watching as a particularly large wild Maja performed the now familiar greeting roar before retreating into the marshes. "Not one of them, but not an enemy either. An interspecies ambassador, Maru agreed, his earlier skepticism having evolved into grudging respect. Though I still wouldn't recommend testing the limits of their tolerance without pup present. As the tension with the Krex subsided and the research program stabilized, Lana found herself increasingly drawn to the philosophical implications of her experience. The traditional alliance approach to indigenous species, minimal interference, observation from a distance, had its merits, but it also created artificial barriers to understanding. Perhaps there was a middle path that allowed for meaningful exchange, without exploitation or control. She was contemplating these questions one evening, sitting at the edge of Pup's enclosure, as the massive predator dozed nearby. When Captain Korvac approached, his crystalline form shimmered in the twilight, facets catching the last rays of Varka 7's setting sun. "Lieutenant," he acknowledged, settling into his crystalline equivalent of a relaxed posture. "A moment of your time?" "Of course, sir," Lana replied, curious about this unusual informal visit. The captain rarely ventured to the research enclosure without specific business. "I've received communication from Alliance Command," Korvac began, his translator rendering his native clicks and hums into measured tones. "Your actions during the Krex incident have been formally recognized. You're to receive the Alliance Medal for Interspecies Research." Lana blinked in surprise. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Thank you" is the traditional response, I believe, Korvac observed dryly, his crystalline structure shifting in what she now recognized as amusement. "Thank you, sir," Lana replied automatically, then frowned. "But I don't understand. The Alliance Medal is usually reserved for long-term scientific achievements, not field actions." "True," Korvac acknowledged. "But Dr. Zeltanis made a compelling case that your work with the Maja represents a paradigm shift in our approach to indigenous intelligence." The committee agreed. His structure shifted again, this time into a more formal configuration. "The commendation notes your innovative approach to cross-species communication and respect for indigenous sentience." A warmth spread through Lana's chest at the validation of her instinctive approach. "That's unexpected but appreciated, sir." "There's more," Korvac continued. "Based on the success of your work here, Command is establishing a new interspecies communication initiative. They've requested that you and Dr. Zeltanis develop training protocols for other frontier outposts facing similar challenges with indigenous species." Lana glanced at Pup, who had awakened and was watching their conversation with that unsettling intelligence. "And what about Pup? What happens to him?" Korvac's crystalline form shifted into what she now recognized as his diplomatic configuration. "That brings me to the final matter. The research team has concluded that your Maja has developed a level of sentience and social bonding that makes returning it to the wild problematic, both ethically and practically." A knot of anxiety formed in Lana's stomach. "So what does that mean?" "It means," Korvac said carefully, "that as the bonded handler, you have a choice to make. The Maja can remain here at Outpost Aegis under the care of Dr. Zeltanis' team, while you fulfill your new duties elsewhere in Alliance space. Or, Lana prompted when he hesitated. "Or Command is prepared to authorize special accommodations for you to retain the partnership, including modified transport and housing specifications for future assignments." Korvac's translator couldn't quite capture the nuance of his native speech, but Lana thought she detected something like amusement. "It seems your unconventional approach has found supporters in high places, Lieutenant." Relief flooded through her. "So Pup wouldn't have to stay here? He could come with me." "If that is your preference, yes." Korvac gestured toward the enclosure. "Though I should note that Pup is perhaps no longer an appropriate designation. Dr. Zeltanis estimates it is a fully mature specimen, possibly one of the dominant individuals in the local ecosystem." Lana smiled. watching as the massive predator rose and stretched its armored body in the fading light, powerful muscles rippling beneath scales that gleamed with health. Maybe not, but names stick, don't they, pup? The Maw rumbled in response, approaching the edge of the enclosure to press its massive head against the barrier nearest her, a gesture that had become their ritual greeting across the separation. Lana placed her hand against the energy field, feeling the faint vibration of the creature's infrasonic communication on the other side. "I think we'll stick together," she said, both to Korvac and to her unusual companion. "We make a good team." Korvac's crystalline structure shifted through several configurations before settling into one she hadn't seen before, something that reminded her of a human nod of satisfaction. "Indeed you do, Lieutenant. Indeed you do." The formal ceremony was brief, but significant. Representatives from each of the species stationed at Outpost Aegis gathered in the central plaza, forming a semicircle around Captain Korvac and the command staff. Lana stood at attention, freshly pressed uniform gleaming in the morning light, acutely aware of Pup watching from just beyond the perimeter barrier, its massive head tilted in that now familiar posture of curious attention. "Lieutenant Lana Reeves," Captain Korvac intoned, his crystalline form configured into the formal presentation stance of his species. "For exceptional contribution to Alliance understanding of indigenous intelligence and the establishment of unprecedented cross-species communication protocols, I am authorized to present you with the Alliance Medal for interspecies research." He extended a crystalline appendage, upon which rested a medallion, a spiral of intertwined metals representing the founding species of the Alliance, with a central starburst that signified new discovery. "Thank you, sir," Lana said, accepting the medal with a formal bow that acknowledged all the species present. "This honor belongs not just to me, but to everyone who supported this research, especially Dr. Zeltanis and her team." The Serpengsi scientist's scales flushed with pleasure at the acknowledgement, her coils shifting in the formal pattern of gracious acceptance. "And," Lana continued, turning to face the perimeter where Pup waited, "to my partner, without whom none of this would have been possible." As if understanding the significance of the moment, the Maw rose to its full height, extending both secondary jaws in what the research team had documented as a dominance display, but which, in this context, seemed more like a salute. The assembled personnel broke into their species' various forms of applause: human clapping, Psylocke mandible clicking, Trias crest fluttering, and others less translatable, but no less sincere. Even Captain Korvac's crystalline form vibrated in the Dreth equivalent of appreciation. As the ceremony concluded and the crowd dispersed, Lana approached the perimeter barrier where Pup waited. Dr. Zeltanis slithered up beside her, datapad in hand as always. "The final transport modifications have been approved," the doctor informed her. "You and Pup will be able to depart for the training center on Proxima Station within the week." "Thank you, Doctor," Lana replied, genuinely grateful for the scientists' tireless advocacy on their behalf. "I couldn't have done any of this without your support." "Nonsense," Dr. Zeltanis dismissed, though her scales rippled with pleasure at the compliment. "You established the initial bond through pure instinct. I merely documented and analyzed what was already occurring naturally." She coiled thoughtfully, regarding the Maw with her multifaceted eyes. "Though I will miss having such a fascinating research subject. The wild population simply doesn't exhibit the same level of interactive complexity." "You're welcome to visit us at Proxima," Lana offered. "I'm sure Pup would be happy to see you." The doctor's translator rendered her native hissing as a chuckle. "I may take you up on that. There are still so many unanswered questions about the neurological basis of your bond." As Dr. Zeltanis slithered away to attend to final preparations, Lana activated the barrier control, stepping into the enclosure where Pup waited. The massive predator lowered its head, pressing its armored forehead against her shoulder in their familiar greeting. Well, big guy, she said softly, stroking the sensitive scales beneath its jaw ridge. Ready for a new adventure? They tell me Proxima Station has artificial habitats designed to simulate various planetary environments. Not quite the marshes of Varka 7, but they're doing their best to make you comfortable. Pup rumbled in response, a sound that she had come to interpret as contentment or agreement. After weeks of intensive interaction, Lana sometimes found it hard to remember that they were separate species from different evolutionary paths. The communication between them had become so natural, so intuitive, that the biological barriers seemed almost irrelevant. As the sun began to set on her final day at Outpost Aegis, Lana stood at the edge of the eastern perimeter, looking out over the marshlands where their unlikely partnership had begun. Pup lounged nearby, occasionally tracking the movements of small flying creatures with lazy swipes of its secondary jaws. "Lieutenant," Maru's voice came from behind her. She turned to find the Psylocke patrol leader approaching, his carapace gleaming blue-black in the fading light. "Final perimeter check complete. All systems normal." "Thank you, Maru," Lana replied, smiling at her now friend. "Hard to believe it's been only 3 months since I arrived here." "Time passes differently on the frontier," Maru observed, mandibles clicking in what she now recognized as his version of philosophical musing. "Experiences are concentrated." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching as the twin moons of Varka 7 began their ascent, casting silvery light across the undulating surface of the marshes. "Will you return someday?" Maru finally asked. Lana glanced at Pup, who had risen to its feet and was gazing at the marshlands with what seemed like longing. "I think we will. This is where it all began, after all. And I suspect Pup will always consider these marshes home, no matter how comfortable they make him at Proxima." As if confirming her assessment, the Maja let out a low, rumbling call, not the aggressive roar of their first encounter, but a gentler sound that nevertheless carried across the open space between the outpost and the forest. To Lana's surprise, an answering call came from the darkness, then another and another, the wild Majas acknowledging their departing kin. "They're saying goodbye," Lana realized, feeling an unexpected tightness in her throat. "Or perhaps until we meet again," Maru suggested, his translator rendering a nuance that his clicking mandibles couldn't express directly. "The Majas have been here for millennia. They understand cycles and returns." Lana nodded, finding comfort in the thought. "Until we meet again, then..." As the calls of the wild Majas faded into the gathering darkness, Lana placed a hand on Pup's massive flank, feeling the strength and warmth beneath its armored scales. Whatever challenges awaited them at Proxima Station and beyond, they would face them together. The human recruit and the apex predator that had chosen to follow her like a pup. Two species, separated by eons of evolution and vast biological differences, yet united by something more fundamental than either could fully articulate. A connection forged in a moment of crisis and strengthened through mutual respect and understanding. Not control, not domination, but partnership. As they turned to head back to the outpost for their final night on Varka 7, Lana couldn't help but think that perhaps this was the true purpose of the Alliance, not just cooperation among recognized sentient species, but the discovery of intelligence and connection in all its diverse and unexpected forms. The future stretched before them, filled with possibilities that neither could have imagined alone.